This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching with part 2 of the beginner quilt project, a 9-patch block. In part 1, we did the fabric prep, washing it and pressing it, cutting it neatly, 3-inch strips, sewing it together, fabric pressing and ironing, and sewing the block. Today we're going to look at block plans, batting, backing, sandwiching, and maybe a quilt plan. We're not going to get all the way to the end. But just a reminder, we had 3-inch strips and we sewed 2 lights and a blue together. And then we sewed a light with a blue on the outside edge. And then we cut each of those, after we pressed them, we set it in 3-inch pieces. Once we did that, we started setting our blocks together, and we could look at the center block to piece the parts that we had. So there was the dark one. Okay, if we were going to do the light in the center, we'd have the light. That means that we'd go and pull in that for the outside and that for the outside. And you'd make sets of blocks. Now, I just picked material I had, and I happen to have, and this is funny because I got the first 2 colors to go together, and then I decided, well, I guess I'm going to put a sashing around the outside or a border, so that ended up being the green. And then the last color is part of the set, but it has the big flowers and the blue background, and so that's going to turn out really good for the back. Then we'll look at batting. There are a lot of different kinds of batting, and what I usually do is look at it and then think about what it is the quilt's going to be used for. If it's really a gift and it's important and it's not going to be washed a lot, I like to use something like Warm and Natural, which is a 80-20. It's 80% cotton and 20% poly. And then also you can buy 100% poly, and this one is a twin, and it's machine washable. It could be washed many times. So if you were making a child's bedspread or baby blanket, you might consider any of those. Here's my piece of backing. It's been pressed, and one of the best spots for me is right here on this wooden floor. So I laid it down, and one of the neat things I saw before was to take some painter's tape and hold the edges down. And it really helps when you get ready to put the batting on top of it and then the top. Okay, here is my piece of batting that's going to go on top of that. And you'll see that the material likes to stick to the batting. And I want the batting to go over the backing if I can. I usually cut it bigger so it will go. And then smooth it out really well. If you get a piece of something like Warm and Natural, and it's got a bunch of wrinkles in it, you can throw it in the dryer for just a few minutes on fluff with maybe a damp towel in there. When I get ready to put the top on in a few minutes, I'm going to take and hook the sandwich together with quilter's pins, which look like safety pins, except the bottom part has got a curve in it so that as you go down in, it grabs it. And you'll see that when we get ready to do that. One of the things that was on the list was making a plan for how you were going to use your blocks. And I had mentioned before that you could take and put your squares and then have a blank square, and it could be white or pink, blue, whatever color went with what you had, and just alternate those. And then the other one, which is a little more complicated, is to put them on point where you have your square is tilted. There would be 8-inch squares in between again. This would be an 8-inch square cut in half. And then the corners would be, I'd use an 8 1/4 square and cut it so that you have a little bit of room for play. And you can also do that if you were using the 8 here. You could be 8 1/4. Okay, then the next thing I want to talk about is the border that I've put on here, and I've got several of sides, but here's what happened to my plan. If you look at it, my plan became like a checkerboard, and I really liked it when I got done because it sure was an easy way to put together a bunch of 3-inch squares. So I'll probably try this again when I want to put a lot together. And that's what my whole quilt is, the squares put together. And there's the back, all the seaming and everything. So now I'm going to show you my quilt. When you get the quilt part done, you want to do some measuring from side to side and top to bottom. Because this one was wonky when I got done because I had about 37 1/2 and 36 or 36 1/2 inches different that was between the sides. So the easiest way for me to do on this one was to trim off on the sides an even amount on both sides till it was the same at the top and the bottom. So then I come and I've got my strips. I've already put on several of them. Now you'll notice that I've got pins in a lot of places. And that's because when I cut it straight across so I didn't waste any fabric. I cut from salvage to salvage. Well, that's the way that you have the stretch. So I wanted to pin it really good so I didn't have a temptation to pull on it when I was sewing it. So I'm going to run this up real quick. I'm going to pause. Alright, I'm back at the ironing board now. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set that seam that I just sewed to put that piece of border on. I'm just going to give it one run through there and you see how nice it's laying. Now, this one I'm going to leave the seam, not open the seam. So I'm going to press away from me. And I've got all 4 sides ready. We're ready to lay it down on the batting. Okay, so now I've got the backing on the floor taped down. I've put the batting on top of that. And you'll see around the edges I've sort of folded the batting in for the time being because I want to know where the edge is. And usually I fold my fabric in half and I've marked a half spot. But this one's so little, I know that this is fitting perfectly right on. And if you have a great big table, you've got a luxury. And then I pull my batting back out because I know that it's on both parts. All right, and I'm going to start pinning, and I'm going to start pinning from the middle. And I'm going to go out. And every time that I've seen it, especially when you start quilting, it's about a fist. And later you'll get where you have a very comfortable level where you can do your pinning. And I have done the stitching, I've done the straight pins, I've done the spray, and so far this is my favorite, is to do the pins. And I'll do the whole quilt all the way out to the edge. So today we did part 2. There's really so many steps to fixing a quilt. You can't do it all at one sitting. It takes a little bit of time. And as you saw, we looked at a couple ways that you could do your block plans. We looked at a couple kinds of batting. Backing is what you would like it to choose. And then doing your sandwich with the backing, the batting, and then the top, and pinning it so you'll be ready to think about quilting next time. Part 3 will be related to quilting your quilt, binding it, and labeling it. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and hit like.